Premera training series. We're going to demonstrate the fusion primer, why you'd want to use that, which applications it makes sense for. Then we're going to move to the crystal densifier. We're going to talk about how that's working, why it's the most efficient way to create polished concrete. We're going to move on to the guard after that. Once you create the polished concrete, then we have a guard as well. Then we're going to go to the quick seal. We're going to demonstrate why I use the quick seal in conjunction with the T2. And then lastly, we're going to do our T2 clear coat over a variety of substrates. So the first thing to talk about is the fusion primer. The fusion primer allows you to do some very unique things in terms when it comes to surface preparation of a substrate. So traditionally, with conventional types of coating systems, epoxies, urethanes, acrylics, you need to have a completely well-profiled surface in order to get adhesion of that coating to the substrate. So the way you do that is by grinding, typically. Grinding either with a giant floor grinder machine, with a hand grinder, something like this, but you need to have some type of profile in order for normal coatings to stick to the substrate. So this can create a lot of time, this can create a lot of dust, and that's a primary thing. One of the major reasons people use fusion primer is if there's an environment where you can't have dust. So if it's a food processing plant, if it's a data center, if it's a aircraft hangar where there's sensitive electronics going on, dust creation can be a big problem, and eliminating that variable is not something that's been possible until the fusion primer was invented. So the fusion primer is very simple. It's a single component spray down primer. You spray it down, you wait about 15 to 20 minutes before it gets tacky like the backside of a piece of tape, and then at that point you have a 90-minute window to get your top coat over that. In this example here, we're going to put a metallic epoxy over an existing coating. So normally, you need to sand this substrate, this existing coating, before you put an epoxy down. We're not going to need to do that. We're going to just spray the fusion primer down and then put the epoxy over it. The variable of surface prep can be as much as half of the time of a coatings job. So by using this one product, you're literally eliminating half of the labor that is normally required to do a job. So you can knock out a job twice as fast, eliminate dust, and just make a whole entire coating job move much more efficiently. So for now, we're going to go spray the fusion primer here, and then we'll move on to the other systems. So we use a 3-gallon pump-up sprayer typically to apply the fusion primer. It needs to be an acetone-resistant pump sprayer. So this particular one is a Swissmex. It's one of the nicer ones out there. The spray pen is really good. It's easy to repair. It's easy to maintain the product. But it's just as simple. It's a single component product. You just pour it into the pump sprayer, pump it up, and then spray it just like you're seeing. So it's just a fine, basically mist coat, especially on something that's not porous, such as a previously coated substrate like this. So it's just a fine mist onto the substrate. This mist will tack up, and then once it gets tacked up, in about 20 minutes, you'll be able to apply your top coat. There are some major reasons why you'd want to use fusion primer, particularly major situations where it makes a lot of sense. That's over tile substrates, where it's normally very difficult to grind the tile. So normally you have to tear up tile, because otherwise tile's too smooth in order to get most coatings to adhere. So it needs to grind. It's very hard to grind tile. So it's a very common reason to use fusion primer. Another is over, obviously non-ground concrete is the most popular way to use fusion primer. Another is for line striping. If you're creating lines via, in a giant warehouse, something like this, then using fusion primer to eliminate that need to grind very small, limited space drastically improves the speed of that. And the last would be balconies. So if there's balconies, very difficult to get a grinding machine up each flight of stairs onto a balcony's limited space. So typically you have to hand grind those types of areas. That's a massive pain, takes a lot of time. So using fusion primer allows you to rapidly coat and prime balconies without the need to actually mechanically abrade. Next product we're going to talk about is a Premera crystal densifier. what this product allows you to do is to dramatically reduce the time required to create polished concrete. So normally, in order to polish concrete out, say it's just a light salt and pepper finish or spec, Class A aggregate exposure. Use a 50 transitional to grind the concrete to just expose the aggregate just a bit, and then you go to 100 transitional, and then you go to 200 resins, 400 resins, 800 resins, 1500 resins, and up to 3000 resins. So to do a several thousand square foot job, that can take a massive amount of time. It could take a week or more to do this. So with the crystal densifier, what we're able to do is just take the concrete to 100 transitionals and then skip all the way to 3000 grit and polish it out with a burnish machine instead of a grinding machine. So the way that we do this is we take the concrete to 100 transitionals, we spray the crystal densifier, you wait about an hour. After that hour, once it's totally dry, then you use this burnish machine, a propane-powered burnish machine, use a 3000 grit diamond pad. And so what this will do is it'll create a perfect, basically glassed out finish, and it'll look exactly identical to a 3000 grit polished concrete. And then after that, if there's any like swirl marks or anything, use a white pad to polish out and get rid of any swirl marks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to spray apply the crystal densifier here, and then over here we've already sprayed this a few hours ago, so this will be ready to burnish right away. So we'll spray apply it, we'll show you how to do that, and then instead of having to wait an hour on camera, we'll just have it'll already be done and we can burnish immediately. So just like the fusion primer, the way we apply the crystal densifier is with a 3-gallon pump-up sprayer. Again, we're using a Swiss Mex. So again, single component product, just pour it into the sprayer, pump it up, and then you're ready to spray apply the crystal densifier. This product will go about 300 to 400 square feet per gallon. So you'll spray it out, and then you wait about 1 hour for it to be totally dry. So no tack to it at all. There's no stickiness. It's totally dry. It's not grabby whatsoever. And then once that hour passes, then you're able to get on it with a burnishing machine and then use the 3000 grit diamond pad to burnish it out to 3000 grit finish level. If you need to go to 400 grit or 800 grit, then it's just as simple as using a 400 or 800 grit burnish pad instead of a 3000. So you're able to match the spec via a burnishing pad rather than a grinding machine. So next up is the Premera Crystal Guard. So the guard product is unique amongst the guards that are out there currently. So where most guards are acrylic based, our Premera Crystal Guard is polycarbonate based. So difference is that acrylics are, they're pretty good at drying fairly quickly, and they can buff out and be very shiny fairly quickly. However, if you get food grade acids, vinegar, pickle juice, red wine, these types of things, it'll quickly dissolve acrylics because acrylics are very vulnerable to those types of materials and acids and etches and things like this. And so basically if, once that goes through the guard, then the polished concrete underneath it is very vulnerable to lemon juice and the same types of food stains and that type of stain causing agent. So the crystal guard being a polycarbonate is the same type of material that your headlights are made out of. And so it's very strong, it's very crystal clear, scratch resistant, but also compared to acrylic guards, it's very chemical resistant. So red wine, pickle juice, vinegar, coffee, lemon, anything like this will not do anything to the crystal guard. It's unique in that way. No other guard on the market is currently like that. We figured out how to make the polycarbonate into material that could be used as a guard. And so what we're gonna do here is we created the polished concrete with our crystal densifier. Now we're gonna microfiber the crystal guard onto the crystal densifier. And then at that point, after about an hour, you can burnish that as well if you want to get some increased shine out of it. And not only can you do that to polished concrete, but you can also do this to VCT. over other types of coatings as well. And so you can replace waxes, you can replace other types of VCT sealers with the Crystal Guard, and you'll get a much more dynamic kind of protection with our products versus the ones that are commonly used today. So the way we're going to apply the Crystal Guard is you can pour it on or you can spray it on, but after that you want to microfiber it onto the surface just like any other guard. So a little goes a very long ways. This is applied at about 800 to 1,000 square feet per gallon. So you pour or spray it onto the surface, and then you can immediately microfiber it onto the rest of the surface. So you do not need to work it in. You just, it's basically just a single pass. This, as you see here, is sufficient just to get a nice even coverage on the surface, and then you're good to go. All right, so next we're going to talk about quick seal. So the most common way quick seal is used is as a way to seal up a very porous substrate before you put on the T2 top coat. So if you were to spray T2 directly onto a very porous substrate such as concrete, it would drink it up, and your coverage per gallon would be much less than it otherwise could be, which means the job is going to be much more expensive. It will still work, but it will be a lot harder to apply correctly and apply in a way that has an even sheen across the floor. So to address porosity of the substrate, we use a quick seal. Quick seal is a super fast drying acrylic. So it's fully dried in 2 minutes. So typically acrylics will take anywhere from an hour to 2 hours before you can put another coat on. With quick seal, 2 minutes later, you can put another quick seal coat on if you need to. If it's a very porous substrate, you might need to use 2 or 3 coats of quick seal to address any spots where the concrete's drinking it up. But 2 minutes after that, you can apply the T2 directly over it, and you'll have a nice, even, glossy film of T2. And so the substrate will not drink up the T2 because it's been sealed with the quick seal. Another way that we use quick seal fairly commonly is to put a stain into the quick seal itself. So put an actual dye, a solvent-based dye. And so that way you can stain and seal in one step, and then 2 minutes later come back and protect it with the T2. So we'll show you quick seal right here, again using the same type of sprayer, a 3-gallon pump-up acetone-proof sprayer. We're using a Swiss Mex. So we'll just show this, and then we'll be ready for the T2 after that. So again, just the same type of sprayer as the rest of the products, 3-gallon pump-up sprayer, just using the Swiss Mex pump sprayer. They're all acetone resistant, solvent resistant sprayers, which is very important. But this is very simple, just spray apply. And typically you want to do 1 coat and then look at the areas where the concrete may have absorbed some of the quick seal and spot treat those areas. So typically what you want to do is do 1 coat and then just do a light coat over that. So 1 coat and then 1 light coat, and then spot treat where needed. So the last product we'll talk about is the Premera T2. So this is our clear coat, our single component, spray down, no back roll clear coat. So it is essentially a liquid crystal that you spray down. Again, using the same type of sprayer, 3-gallon pump sprayer, acetone proof. And so what this is going to do is it's going to create a thin layer of literally a quartz-based crystal that's going to cure out into a real crystal. And what that's going to deliver to the surface is high abrasion resistance, high chemical resistance, anti-slip, and make the floor much, much more durable. And so this film can handle aggressive industrial acids, bases, harsh hydrocarbons, corrosive materials. It's going to be one of the most chemical resistant finishes that you can create on any type of surface. So what we're going to show here today is we're going to show that uniquely you can spray the T2 over a metallic epoxy while it is still wet. This floor was done about 5 minutes ago. We're going to show that you can spray it over a metallic epoxy or regular epoxy floor while it's still wet. The reasons you want to do that is because you don't have to come back the next day to put your clear coat on. So this is a big deal. It saves a lot of time. After we do the T2 on the metallic, we're going to spray the T2 over the quick seal, which we just done a few minutes ago. So this floor is nice and sealed up from the quick seal. So now when we spray the T2 on, the substrate's not going to drink the T2. The T2 is going to be nice, even, glossy film on top. And it's just going to, the concrete's not going to drink it up anymore because we sealed it with quick seal. The last thing we'll do is we'll show that you can microfiber the T2 over an existing dried film of epoxy or other type of coating. We're going to show a mop method. The reason you want to use a microfiber is to cut down on the odor of the T2. It's not a very harsh odor by any means, but that said, certain customers can be more particular about any type of odor whatsoever. So if it's an occupied space, if it's a mall, something like that, then I want to want as little odor as possible. And so if that's the case, we can microfiber apply the T2 instead of spraying it. Normally it's sprayed, but we'll show you a different application method as well. One way to think about the T2 is as taking the best parts of a lot of different types of coatings out there and then combining it with some unique things that the T2 can do. So for example, the T2's got the chemical resistance of like a Novolac epoxy. It's one of the most chemical resistant materials that exist. So T2 oftentimes can beat it. It also has the scratch resistance and abrasion resistance of a urethane. So normally you put an epoxy down, you have to put a urethane over the top of it to provide some scratch resistance. So the T2 has the scratch resistance of a urethane and the chemical resistance of a Novolac epoxy. And so it also has kind of the adhesion almost of an acrylic where there's no need to abrade a surface prior to putting the T2 down. So we can go over an existing coating without needing to abrade the coating or the substrate whatsoever with the T2. It's going to chemically react and become part of it. So it's kind of like having the best part of an acrylic, the best part of a urethane, the best part of epoxy or Novolac epoxy all in one, very easy to use, simple spray down product. It's going to last a long time and protect against almost anything you can throw at it. So this is the T2 wet on wet over a metallic epoxy again. So it's applied the same way as you would apply the T2 to anything else. Once the epoxy's been put down for about 5 to 10 minutes, you can get over it with the T2. Spray, apply it with a 3-gallon pump-up sprayer. When you're doing the wet on wet, the reason you'd want to do that is because your guys can get on top of you can add the clear coat the same day that you apply the epoxy. And so that basically saves you a whole mobilization coming back the next day. That can save a lot of time, especially in larger square footages. And so being able to spray something wet on wet is very unique. The only other, T2 is the only product on the market that can do this. And so very unique aspect of the coating. So here we're gonna spray the T2 over the quick seal. So again, you'd use a quick seal and T2 combination. If you have a clean and seal, a grind and seal, it's gonna be the most chemical resistant, abrasion resistant finish you can put on a clean and seal or grind and seal. You can create these systems very quickly, and for the speed, for the performance that you're getting from the speed in combination, there's no better way to protect floors. So we're gonna do T2 over the quick seal, and then after that, we're gonna put the T2, we're gonna mop it on existing coated floor. Yep. So the last thing we'll show is applying T2 to an existing coating that's fully dry using a microfiber method. So the way you do that is you still use the 3-gallon pump sprayer. You unscrew the tip of the pump sprayer, you place the wand to the ground, and you run a bead in an S pattern across the floor. So you're just putting a little line of the coating on the floor And then right behind that, you've got a microfiber pad, and you're tracing basically the line, spreading the T2, all in just one touch, one pass. And then you walk yourself out, and you're done.